I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump.
Well, when the president had his big boy press conference yesterday, he kicked things off with a reference to his running mate and Vice President Kamala Harris, but it didn't go exactly as planned.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration, I
really do enjoy watching Anthony Blinken's reaction to that.
Wouldn't have picked
By the way, this is also noteworthy. The White House has officially edited the transcript of those remarks. As you can see, they show that he did in fact say Trump. It's been struck through, and Harris has been put there in brackets just in case anybody was worried about what he actually meant by that. Elaine, at that moment, did you sort of think, oh boy, here we go. It's going to be a roller coaster, this press conference?
Yeah, it was kind of how I felt the night of the debate as we were getting started, and it just was a disaster from the first sentence that he spoke. But look, since that debate, the stress that he must be under, so he's already diminished, tragically, but every time he gets on the world stage or in an interview or giving a speech, if he doesn't have that teleprompter in front of him, the stress that he's feeling must just exacerbate everything. And so to mix up somebody's name, I mean, you and I probably do that all the time, or, sort of forget something or can't pull that name, top of our head or whatever. No one thinks you and I are diminished. We just are having that moment where you can't pull it from the top of your head. Mm-hmm. But all it does is add to the narrative and add to the problems. And it shows that the stress is also getting to him.
So you've mentioned that you don't think he's going to be the nominee. How do you think this transpires? Because I agree with you. And again, I do have some sympathy for the fact that every time he is going to be seen now making a public statement, all eyes are just going to be transfixed and waiting for it to be another, Titanic of a disaster like it was at the debate. And you can't have that as a politician and a public figure. So what happens here? Is this a behind the scenes deal that's being made with him, or will it be a more public sort of knives out situation?
The Democrats, as much as they want to protect democracy, they tend to do and bend rules in any direction that ensures the end result that they want. So I wouldn't put it past them to make this some sort of a backroom deal. And they've got a challenge on their hands, obviously, with Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first African-American woman to be vice president. And they're going to have to contend with her if she is not the choice that they want to put in his place. Because of their, intense support for DEI policies. And that's going to be problematic for them because she is going to be in a powerful position to demand that position.
Yeah, diversity for diversity's sake is how Kamala Harris became vice president. So it is kind of rich and ironic to see everybody openly talking about moving her to the side now. Gabe, the moment when Joe Biden called his vice president Trump, what ran through your mind?
Larry, I had me thinking, I think we could have a unity ticket. I think this would be great for everyone. These are the two people everyone wants. I think, put Trump at VP, Secretary of State J.D. Vance. In all seriousness, I mean, again, I think Christine made a good point. It illustrates the increasing pressure that the president's facing. He, again, like we've said, he has been making verbal missteps since 2020. And of course, it obviously is getting a lot worse. And I think he is now facing most of the press that is putting the pressure on him, that is writing antagonistic stories, that is trying to ask him tough questions. George Stephanopoulos was a pretty tough interviewer for him, and he faced scrutiny from ABC for that, unsurprisingly. But he's facing a lot of pressure. And as far as a backroom deal, I don't know exactly what that looks like as far as pushing him aside, but it's notable that they're are a lot of White House aides and staffers who are leaking to the press. And the question is, how much of those aides are actually working for Kamala Harris or Kamala Harris herself?
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of these leaks that we're getting right now are probably people who are trying to line up for a better position in the Harris administration. Alec, Biden calling his vice president Trump, though, just for the value of the meme quotient here that will be built out exponentially for several weeks. That was gold, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it is gold from a campaign perspective. I mean, it's funny. It's perfect campaign fodder that's going to be in every mashup from now until the convention. But it shouldn't be, honestly. Like, again, this is Biden just after a big NATO speech on the world stage, flanked by NATO leaders. He's got his Secretary of State and other officials in the front row, obviously reacting very negatively to his gaffes. So even they can't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that, like I said, like they just can't hide it anymore. Like for years, this the condition of Joe Biden was hidden by his staff, his cabinet, and the media themselves. And now that all of a sudden you just flat out can't hide it anymore, I don't think that we should be congratulating journalists for all of a sudden doing their job,
Oh,
what they should
hell
have been
no.
doing for the past 2 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, let's pick up on that, Alec, because I want to show you another clip. Because all these journalists, they say, oh, they were hiding this from us. They're hiding. No, they weren't. No, they weren't at all. It was right there. We've been talking about it. They didn't get it wrong. They chose not to acknowledge what everybody saw. Here's another example. This is just from the press conference last night, but you could put this montage together for the last 4 years. Watch.
Look, folks, this is well, anyway, in the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling in the 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway, it wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is. And anyway, but then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
All right. And thank you for Fox News for putting together that montage. But I got to be honest, my father is 87 years old and he has Alzheimer's. This is a thing he does too. There's so many millions of Americans who are seeing this right now, Alec. And he uses this anyway thing, number one, when he can't remember what he was saying, or when he goes down a path to say something that he knows he shouldn't say, and then he stops himself and says anyway. But that anyway, we've been seeing that anyway for years now. The reporters, the media, they've ignored it willfully because they're on his side and they don't want to point out something that makes them look vulnerable. That's really what's at play here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the journalists and the media are just taking the White House and the government at their word. What happened to investigative reporting, or just simply asking like a probing question? They don't want to somehow make angry the White House or the Biden campaign, and then ruin that like great relationship that they have, and then get absolutely torched in the newsroom later by all the Democrat activists that work there.
Yeah, speaking truth to power is what the reporters are supposed to do, Gabe. Those are your colleagues. You're a reporter. Are there things right now that you're seeing transpire that you think deserves some sort of reckoning for the press, or do you, being a member of the media and being a liberal means never having to say you're sorry?
Well, what's happening, right? Like we've been talking about on this program, we've been talking about for weeks now in conservative media, is that legacy media, they didn't wake up to Biden's problems. Maybe in some respects they finally something clicked for them, but Biden has displayed a lack of mental stability for several years now. And the fact that they've ignored this story, this is part of a trend that we've seen for a long time with the legacy media, whether it be the Hunter Biden laptop, whether it be reporting in conservative media about the idea that COVID-19 emerged from the Wuhan lab, whether it be the Russian collusion hoax with the Steele dossier and that being linked to Hillary Clinton's campaign in the DNC. So for any number of stories, or that the notion that Hunter Biden's laptop, the Politico letter, I guess I mentioned that, but this is a common trend, and it should be a reckoning. It absolutely should be. Unfortunately, I don't think that legacy media outlets and those journalists view it in the lens of them neglecting these stories. I think they view it in the sense of that, oh, the White House has been, in some respects, right? It's true. They've been shielding this. They've been hiding Biden away. That is true. But they have also not been asking tough questions, and they've done a great disservice to Americans by doing that.
Well, that's true. I mean, Jake Tapper and Chuck Todd's faux outrage this week of things that we've seen going on for years was really something rich to behold. It's and let's face it, half of the things that you just noted about the Russian collusion and the dossier, and they won awards for their coverage of those stories. Forget about actually having a reckoning on the truth of those stories, which reminds me also of something that I wanted to bring up. Anyway.